first things first, was Brooksource. Where did I come from? So Brooksource are actually one of the top 20 IT consulting firms in the US. And we work with a variety of Fortune 100 partners, typically through like a contract to hire. But where I actually specialize is our Elevate program that scales across all 3 of our branches that cover IT opportunities, healthcare IT, and then anything that falls under non-IT as well. So Elevate is our associate level consulting program, and I specifically work with boot camps and universities in addition to our client base out here to help educate both sides of the party on what associate level talent looks like, what students are looking at or learning in school, and what companies are typically looking for when it comes to industry trends or new projects that they're working on, so that both sides of the party really benefit and really can give themselves a better insight as to what's coming. So as I mentioned, I focus on associate level positions, but that's specific to 0 to 3 years of professional IT experience. So that can be anyone from freshman year up to even your PhD if you don't have professional IT experience. So anyone that falls within that category, I'm here to help. But my role specifically is broken down into about 3 buckets. First one being coaching and mentorship. So I work with students through resume reviews, LinkedIn reviews, up to mock interviews, prepping for the career fair like we're doing right now. I also set up one-on-ones with lots of students to help them individually with specific job opportunities that may come about for them too. So career coaching and mentorship is a good chunk of my position. Second is connecting you with career opportunities. So for our company within Arizona, I hire for all junior level positions. So anyone that falls into an associate IT level opportunity, I'm the hiring manager for that. So I help you guys when it comes to prepping for those interviews, getting you in the door with these companies, up to ideally onboarding you for your first opportunity outside of school. If you are to lock down an opportunity through us, I also manage and run the Elevate program during your 40-hour work week. So I actually build out customized technical training per person based off of where you are and where you need to be technically to succeed in the role. I also work with you guys through building up your soft skills, getting you exposure to leadership, but most importantly, helping you really integrate yourself within the company and the culture of the team. So let's dive in. Prepping for the career fair. It's going to be a little awkward this year. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. I've done a couple so far, but it's really, really important to treat a virtual career fair as if it's an in-person event. So that means making sure that you're prepping ahead of time, you're still dressing professional head to toe, you're still getting that contact information, and you have your resume ready to go in case a manager asks for it. So first things first, you need to tap into Handshake. You need to look at the ASU events site to make sure that you're signing up. But even if you're a freshman or a sophomore and you're thinking, well, I don't need a job right now, you know, I'm just going to be focusing on school, but this is a perfect opportunity to build out your network. Even if you're not looking for a position right now, you can still meet with some industry leaders that you can contain, or you can maintain that connection even 2 years down the road when you are looking for an opportunity. So definitely make sure that you're still attending the career fairs, even if it's from a networking standpoint. But before you attend the career fair, make sure that you are researching the companies that you decide to sign up for. Typically, they frequently ask, like, why'd you sign up for this? And if you say, I have no idea what you do, it's probably not going to look good. So just make sure that you're researching the companies ahead of time, but definitely take a look at Handshake and see everyone who's going to be there. So a little checklist to run through. Again, make sure you dress professional. I've had a situation where I had a separate webcam and he was wearing a dress shirt and basketball shorts and his webcam fell. Super awkward for the both of us. Don't be that guy. So just make sure that you're dressing professional from head to toe. And then again, making sure that you're researching the companies. It is extremely impressive when you can walk in the door and talk about the initiatives that that company is pushing towards, the new innovations that they're tapping into. It shows that you really are interested in that employer specifically, and you have what it takes to get in the door because you embody what they're moving towards. Practicing your elevator pitch, which we'll chat about here in a second. Making sure that you're tapping into your interests, why you decided to sign up there. making sure you're getting that contact information. And then this is something that typically trips up people, but taking notes after your conversation. It can look really distracting when your head is down and you're taking notes. The manager is going to think like, is this person even listening to me? Like, they haven't even looked up once. I don't even know if I'm talking to myself or if they're even listening. So make sure that you are maintaining eye contact, you're taking mental notes, and then afterwards you can frantically jot down your notes, but make sure that you are engaged in that conversation. And then most importantly, setting up that follow-up email. Even if you were like, wow, I really don't care about this company, this isn't interesting by any means, still take the time to draft maybe a 2-sentence email saying, thank you so much for your time. It was great learning about your company. Because at the end of the day, even if you're like, this was not a good fit for me right now, what if 2 years or 2 months down the road, you're like, hey, I just saw they posted a job that would be the perfect fit for me. Having your name out there and having these managers remember you is going to be important. And not many students send a follow-up thank you. At the end of the day, these managers are taking hours out of their day to meet with you guys. And so it's going to be important that you're still sending up that follow-up email saying thank you for your time, because a little bit goes a long way. And then obviously, in order to take notes, always have a notepad in hand, a pen, and then have a PDF copy of your resume ready to go. There are some employers that will ask, you know, within that 5-10 minute meeting, if you can email it on over to them so that they could take a look. Sometimes they'll ask you to send it right after. So just make sure that you have your resume completely done and ready to go to send. So going to reiterate, dress code. I feel like guys are a little bit sillier in this field when it comes to making sure that they're maintaining that proper dress code, but making sure that you have proper dress shirt, dress pant, you're professional from head to toe. It's going to be really important. And with this being virtual, it's going to be a little different behind a computer screen, but confidence is key. Walking into that virtual interview or signing into that virtual interview and just being kind of timid is going to look a little off-putting. So make sure that you come in, you're enthusiastic, you're showing your personality, because at the end of the day, first impressions matter. And you want to make sure that you're leaving a lasting impression. And you also want to make sure that you're getting the most out of that conversation. If you only have 5 or 10 minutes to talk to these hiring managers, you want to make sure that you're getting questions answered, you're explaining to them what your background is, so that you can ideally get that follow-up set or that interview set. So obviously you guys are a great bunch. You're going to get some interviews at the end of the career fair. So what to do in order to crush that interview? So most interviews right now are virtual. I don't think many companies are doing in person, if any right now. So how to tap into a virtual interview is going to be really important. First things first, you need to find a quiet room. I mean, my mom is notorious for walking in every 20 seconds asking what snacks I want. So making sure you're telling your family, hey, I have an interview, telling your roommates, like, please don't run around in the background. Make sure you have a quiet and private room. And then mindful of background and lighting. Some folks are not as fortunate to have great lighting, but try and make sure that you find a setup, whether it be a study room, in like a dorm hall, or you just have a bunch of lamps on you. Just make sure that you're testing out that lighting. And as far as background goes, I typically say it doesn't look professional to have, you know, like your school flag and stuff like that. Just make sure it's like a professional background, typically a white wall or like some plants or something, totally fine. Testing your video and audio ahead of time. There have been a lot of times in the career fairs so far where people's mics were not working. And so we totally lost the 10 minutes to conversate and we had to set up like a follow-up time, but sometimes managers don't even set up a follow-up. Like if it's not working, on to the next. And you also want to make sure that if this manager and you are both setting an hour of your day to sit in this interview, you want to make sure that you get to utilize that full hour. You only get one interview with them. So if you have technical difficulties, that's going to take away time for you to really sell yourself. Next, have a glass of water ready next to you. You're going to be talking a lot, and so you just want to make sure you have water next to you. And then figuring out what type of interview this is. So most students feel pretty awkward asking like a recruiter or hiring manager like what kind of interview this is, but they're like recruiters are used to it. At the end of the day, this is what's going to help you prep for what's next. So figuring out, will it be via Skype? Will it be via Zoom? Is this going to be technical? Is this just an introductory call? What kind of content are you going to be covering? Because this will help you figure out, what do I need to prepare? So just asking like, hey, how long is this interview going to be? Is this going to be technically focused? You know, what's kind of the game plan of the interview will help you just prepare and feel a little bit more confident going into that interview. And then making sure that your GitHub is up to date. If you have any projects that you're really proud of, and they ask you to send over a portfolio, make sure that you have that already compiled. And then one thing that I really love doing and advise a lot of people to do is make sure that you have your resume printed and the job description and compare the two and annotate. So go through and figure out, all right, here's something that I'm interested in and here's how it's transferable to my resume. Because at the end of the day, probably not word for word, it's not going to be a carbon copy, but if they say like strong communicator and in your resume, it's all technically focused, at least you know, hey, maybe I should hit on this a little bit because it's not in my resume. So make sure that you're going through that job description, you're taking notes through it and really hitting home on how your resume is transferable to the job description, and whatever's not on there that you think you can cater to, talk to that. And then I cannot emphasize this enough, never, ever, ever leave an interview without asking questions. Once again, it's a one-time shot. And so you can probably get information of like, what's the day-to-day of the role from the job description, but you can't get information of like, what's the culture of the team? What's kind of the environment that you're going to be working in? So making sure that you're having those questions prepped, because at the end of the day, you're also setting time aside to interview. And so you guys are awesome. You're a great bunch. This is an opportunity for you to interview the employer as well to make sure, is it the right fit for you? You're allowed to be picky, not just like, hey, it's a job, so I'll take it because money is cool. Making sure that it's a right fit for you as much as it is for them. And then most importantly, prepping your pitch. So anyone heard about the tell me about yourself? It is the most awkward question and everyone's like, what do you mean? Like, what's my favorite colors? Or like, I don't really know. So the tell me about yourself is basically your elevator pitch. It's what makes you unique and it's what you're building your brand around. So when it comes to crafting an elevator pitch, there's a variety of things that you can think of to really put that together and make you sell yourself as the best professional out there. So I typically say when it comes to prepping this, I personally love to just take a notepad and pen and start bullet pointing, listing what I bring to the table, what my qualities are, whether it's academic or professional that would demonstrate why I'm super awesome, and how I can contribute to their team and the project specifically. Also building out your accomplishments, your achievements, obstacles you've overcome, learning lessons, because at the end of the day, even if you don't incorporate all of this into your pitch, you can use all of this content to start crafting answers for other behavioral questions where they say, you know, maybe you dealt with a difficult student in a project. How did you overcome that? And so tackling these kinds of questions will help you craft your pitch, but also answer questions later on in the interview. So your elevator pitch, again, it's basically your why, like who I am, why I chose my degree, what do I want to do with it, and why I would be a good fit for XYZ opportunity. So make sure that you're using a specific or specific examples and why it caters to that job or that company that you're interested in. So for example, if you're interviewing with American Airlines and, you know, growing up, you always had a passion for aviation, you were always fascinated with physics and aeronautics, tap into that, because at the end of the day, that's something that makes you unique. And that's what they want to hear, is what makes you unique, because they can have a bunch of people with a computer science degree and you guys all learned object-oriented principles and Java and, you know, you can do the development, but what sets you apart from the person next to you? And then most importantly, try not to have it over 90 seconds, just because you also don't want to bore them in the first initial 90 seconds of the meeting. So try to consolidate it to 90 seconds. It sounds It sounds like not a lot, but I promise you can get plenty of information in that time. And then most importantly, the STAR method. So the STAR method is the most effective method of communicating what you did. It's a form of storytelling, and it walks a person through everything that you did from start to finish. So it stands for situation, task, action, and result. So when you're going through your projects and figuring out, all right, here are 4 to 5 projects that I think I could really talk about in this interview, use the STAR method to build those out. You know, what was the background? It was my capstone where I was working on a mobile application. What were the challenges that you faced? You know, I did not know React, but that was something that I learned for the application itself because it was something that I was really interested in tapping into specifically, and I wanted to expand my knowledge a little bit. So what was the action? I utilized Udemy to pick up some training courses, and I started applying it to the project. And the result, we wrapped it up all together. We presented it to the business stakeholder, and now they're using it within the company. Just building that out a little bit is just a handful of bullet points that you're building out per project, but making sure that it's transferable to the types of questions that they're asking. It's really hard to wing the STAR method. And that's why I say always have your examples prepared ahead of time. Typically they fall under the tell me about a time when you had trouble with a professor or something like that. And so have these examples built out because you can tailor them in accordance to the questions, but it's really hard to think of the STAR method on the fly. And then most importantly, I said this before, I'll say it again, do not leave without asking any questions. So I think it's safe to assume, you know, you guys are a Society of Women's Engineers, so you want to tap into technology. So they're going to want to know, why did you choose technology? Last thing they want to hear is, well, the money was good. They want to know what ties you to tech. And so being able to really stay educated on trends and what the business is doing, well, once again, it'll set you apart. And a great way to do that is tapping into LinkedIn, following companies that you're interested in, following the companies that you're interviewing with, because they frequently post articles on what they're doing to stay ahead of the curve, and they're posting articles on maybe how they're responding to COVID too. So being able to walk into an interview and talk in an educated manner is going to be really important. And then tying it to maybe a previous experience, maybe in high school, you were really interested in gaming and you loved to see how kind of like the UI evolved over time. That was really fascinating to you. And so that's what got you into web dev. So kind of tapping into those things, because once again, you're in that interview explaining why you're unique and what you can bring to the table. And then most importantly, you have this degree, you have this experience, what do you want to do with it? And it's okay if you don't know 100%, like I want to be a backend developer working with Java and the Spring framework at American Airlines on XYZ team. Like they're not expecting you to know that, but having a general idea of saying, hey, like I have a strong passion for aeronautics, and growing up, you know, we traveled a lot as a family and I was always fascinated by it. And so I'd love to take everything that I've learned and tap that into this field and this industry and see how I can continue to help the team push the needle towards more innovative methods. But just making sure that you're tying your experience to what you want to do with it. So now we're going to compile it all together. So I do have a little worksheet for you guys to work on. I believe, Claire, you mentioned that you might help me out here as far as the breakout rooms goes. But I'm actually going to throw a little Google Doc in the chat, and I'll have a link to the worksheet for you guys to hop into. But take a few minutes here to take a peek on how to start to build out your tell me about yourself. This is not the end all be all, but this will help you start to break down what's going to be the best thing to throw into an elevator pitch, and it'll get your wheels turning on how should I start to craft, you know, putting together projects and whatnot. So let's take the next, I don't know, do you think like 5 or so minutes would be good?
Okay, so I will put everyone into breakout rooms. Let's see, there's 22 of us. I'll make 7 rooms, and then everyone make sure to grab the link in the chat before I sign you guys, because after I do that, you won't be able to grab that link. So make sure you do that. Okay, I see 15 people on the dock. Everyone should probably have one by now, so I'll create the rooms. Okay.
Oh, we got the official lady.
I'm going to reserve that title forever, the official lady. Awesome. So when it comes to consolidating it, again, it's going to be a quick like 60 to 90 seconds. So obviously mine is not 100% accurate. I did not go to ASU, sorry, or study computer science. But a good example would be, hi, my name is Shivani, and I'm currently finishing up my senior year at ASU where I study computer science. I initially got into coding after working as a volunteer in a hospital where I realized that the healthcare industry worked with data technology that would make it pretty difficult for doctors to obtain patient information rather quickly. I realized that I could actually tie coding and my passion for healthcare to help revolutionize the industry and patient care. So I clearly explained who I am, what I'm doing now, what some previous experience was, and how I tied that to why I chose my major and what I want to do with it. So for time purposes, and just to spare you guys, I'm not going to make someone volunteer. But as Claire mentioned, and we'll also wrap up at the end, if you guys do want to practice this before the career fair, just let me know. I'm happy to run through it with you guys. So day of the interview, lots of nerves, but hopefully it'll be a little bit easier in a virtual environment. That being said, treat it identical to an actual interview. So making sure you're still signing on about 5 to 10 minutes ahead of time, because at the end of the day, there might even be a manager that hops in a little bit early, and that gives you a little bit of extra face time to chit chat, kind of calm your nerves a little bit, but also making sure that if you do have any technical difficulties that you allocated enough time for that. Second thing that I'm very guilty of, I feel so awkward doing it, but eye contact with the camera. I feel weird. I feel like I'm staring into the person's soul, so I don't do it. But that being said, managers welcome it. They know it's something that in a virtual environment, it's awkward, but it is professional. So either you can stare into the camera, but if you're like me and you feel super uncomfortable doing that, just making sure that you're maintaining like contact with the manager in the screen. You're not reading anything, your eyes are not shifting, because especially in a camera, it is so easy to tell if someone is like reading off of the script. For an interview, you have notes pulled up, and especially for someone like me who has glasses, you can actually see it reflect back. And so you just need to make sure that it's just you facing the manager or the managers. Next is facial expressions, body language. If you're slouching, if you're leaning back, it just shows that you're not you're quite disinterested. So just making sure that you're still engaged. Once again, it's going to be identical to an in-person interview. Sit up straight, look professional. And once again, dress professionally, don't be this guy. And then wearing a headset. So a lot of folks are wondering, can you wear like an over-the-ear headset, kind of in-the-ear headset? That's completely okay. I would actually advise more so of the earbuds rather than the over the head, just because once again, it just looks a little more professional, but make sure that the mic is working okay, audio is working okay before you hop into that interview. And then most importantly, it's really hard to do a virtual interview from an interviewer and an interviewee's side because you can't show your enthusiasm as well. And so making sure that you're coming in with that bright personality, you're excited to be there, making sure that you're showing that, because in general, a virtual interview, it's new to everyone and it's awkward to everyone. So making sure that you're making the best of the situation and that you're excited to be there will be important. And then similar to the career fair, sending that thank you email to that hiring manager, even if you're like, God, I bombed that, like I'm not getting that job, still send that email, because at the end of the day, you could be the harshest critic on yourself and they thought that you were absolutely awesome. It's happened in the past plenty of times. So just making sure that you're sending that thank you email for their time is going to be really important. And then even if you don't hear back within a couple weeks or even within a week, send a follow-up. I am guilty of having emails go to the bottom of my inbox because I get 50 to 100 emails a day. And so sometimes I will miss an email and I don't mean to, because I absolutely love everyone that I work with. And so just making sure that you're sending that follow-up email in case it was missed will be important. So technical questions. This is more so focused a little bit on dev opportunities, but it could be quite transferable to other more technical interviews. So they typically cover personal questions. So that's going to entail your behavioral questions of like, tell me about a time when, tell me about this project that you worked on, what do you do in your free time, or what do you do for fun? Those are going to be more so of the personal questions. And then there's also theory-based questions. So this falls under any degree of Q&A. It's going to be more so definition-based. Can you explain to me what this concept is? And then there's whiteboarding, which is the bane of everyone's existence. It is uncomfortable, it's different, and we'll chat about that in a second, but they're typically algorithm driven. A lot of the times it's like a Fibonacci sequence. And so practicing these is going to be really important, especially if you're hopping into a developer interview. And then lastly, making sure that you are wrapping up with questions, whether they be technical, the specific code base that they're working with, that team specifically, if they're agile or waterfall. Once again, make sure that you have those questions prepped. But whiteboarding, this is what every person hates in an interview. It's awkward. You need to, well, in this case, not necessarily stand up, but you would be sharing your screen to either one or more folks who are interviewing you. And typically it is a panel style where you stand up in front of the room, you're given an expo marker, and you're actually walking the managers through the problem. So they're saying, you know, X plus 3 equals 2. And you're trying to explain to them why X is -1. And you're actually just walking them. And so it's ensure that you're practicing how to whiteboard is going to be really important. There's a lot of great resources out there when it comes to like cracking the Google interview. There's a lot of YouTube videos. So I highly encourage you that before you hop into a technical interview, take a look at whiteboarding, because a lot of interviews are now shifting more towards the whiteboarding style. So practicing coding, whether you are practicing Python or R, you know, really whatever you're working with, HackerRank, cracking the coding interview, LeetCode, just a few examples that are really helpful when it comes to testing your knowledge in an environment that's going to be pretty close to the real environment. So the logic questions, these are the ones that make you think. They're the word problems, and these are the ones that Microsoft, Google, and Amazon absolutely love. Because at the end of the day, it's not about, are you going to get the right answer 100% of the time, but how are you problem solving and how are you thinking through the problem is going to be most important. So these are just a few example logic questions. There are so many questions out there. Definitely take a look at like Glassdoor questions. A lot of people post those on there. Handshake even has a feature where you can go to the company and students have like interview questions that they went through posted on there too. So just make sure that you're taking a look at those questions ahead of time, because at the end of the day, it's going to be really difficult to prepare for logic questions, but kind of tapping into that side of your brain of figuring out, okay, if I'm given XYZ word problem, how am I going to work through it? So that's going to be the most important part when it comes to logic questions. And then lastly, if they don't ask why should we hire you, that's pretty much why you're in the interviews, them trying to figure out why should they hire you. And so if they don't ask you, that's what your whole interview is around. And so once again, this is your opportunity to explain why you're that best fit. And that's why it's going to be important to make sure that you're annotating that job description, because you're looking at what they're looking for, what the key points are, and you're tailoring your resume and your expertise to that opportunity. So again, making sure that you're going through your resume, going through that prep sheet that you guys worked through to figure out what are my technical skills, my soft skills, what awards have I received, what clubs am I involved in, what sets me apart from other people. And then salary expectations. So this can throw some folks off just because it's an uncomfortable question to be asked of what are your compensation expectations, or what are you targeting for salary? So make sure that you're doing your research ahead of time, because you also want to make sure that you're not giving the short end of the stick. So Glassdoor, Career Builder, those are great resources. There's also PayScale and Dice. So just make sure that you're doing some research ahead of time, because if you're tapping into maybe a networking engineer opportunity versus a junior software engineer back-end focused opportunity, they're going to be different, even if it's within the same company or it's within the same, under like the same director. And so just making sure you're doing that research ahead of time is going to be important. So as I said before, you're going to ask questions at the end of the interview, but don't ask the basic questions of what's the day-to-day, what's the culture like? Because this could be done either from the job description or a Google search. And so you want to make sure that you're asking thought-provoking questions. Figuring out what has this company done to also stand out, and also figuring out, once again, this is an opportunity for you to interview them as much as them interviewing you. So whatever you can't get from a job description, now's your time to ask. And just a few example questions that I think are thought-provoking, that are outside of the box, and they tap into kind of how companies are evolving right now. Is like, can you tell me about how your company has maneuvered and positioned itself during COVID? How has the organization kept morale and engagement up during this time? You can even tap into how they've navigated the virtual environment. What learning development and mentorship programs do they have in place? Are they still offered in a virtual aspect? Asking questions that you wouldn't necessarily get from a Google search or from a job description are going to be really important. And then, as you can assume, after the interview, you're going to ask questions, you're going to get that contact information, you're going to send that thank you. And then if you don't hear back, just send a follow-up. But most importantly, in that interview, make sure you're taking note of who's in there. It looks kind of unprofessional if you address an email and you don't even remember who you're talking to or who was in the interview. But especially if you're able to name drop every person, it shows you paid attention, you're attentive. And especially if you can say, hey, I really appreciated that you talked about how your company embodies innovation and grit. That's something that I like to embody in my work and all of my projects. And that's why I think that your mission statement and your company really aligns with what I'm looking for. Take something that they mentioned to you and tie that into your thank you note, because once again, it showed that you have the interest, you have the investment, and that you were paying attention. Whew. Questions. Talk so fast there.
Just real quick, on one slide, it looked like you had said follow up within 2 weeks, and then this last one said 1 week. Is there a, which one do you think is better?
Yeah, so I say 1 to 2 weeks. So when it comes to the follow-up time, I've seen folks where they follow up within a week, and it's perfectly fine, but I say the longest you should go is 2 weeks. So if you don't hear from them, follow up within a couple weeks, but I would say as soon as 1 week. You don't want to follow up just 3 days later. So 1 to 2 weeks.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, as far as questions in regards to COVID, do you think it's appropriate to ask them if, let's say, for example, they continued their internship program last summer? Because I know quite a few people, their internships were essentially canceled. So do you think like asking them like, did you continue your internship program this past summer during COVID?
Yep. So I think it's all about how you word it. So you can say more so on the lines of, I know a lot of companies have had a difficult time acclimating to the new changes in the new environment. I was just curious, how has the company continued to push the needle to still provide opportunities for students? Did you still, were internships offered in a virtual environment? Were you still offering opportunities for on-site? So I would say don't be so blunt to be like, hey, did you still do it or no? But more so of how did you navigate these changes, and were there still opportunities provided, because you're a company that I'm extremely interested in and I want to figure out how I can tap into it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have another question. It was actually one that somebody had asked earlier. They said, if we can't find a blank background in our house, can we use a professional Zoom background?
Yep, definitely. Just make sure that it's professional. I've seen folks that have some like wacky backgrounds and it doesn't look great. But I would even say like your background with a whiteboard, perfectly fine. So I would say, yes, you can do that. But as you guys know, with the Zoom backgrounds, it can also like come in and out if you move. And so I would just say to minimize the risk to just find like a study room or a blank background.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question more geared towards the actual career fair. Like before we get an interview, I feel like I am a lot more engaging in person, and I can like be more, and so how would you recommend setting yourself apart in a Zoom room with like 12 other people that are looking for the same job opportunity?
Yeah, so the enthusiasm piece is going to be huge. As you can tell, I'm very high energy, and so I always like to come into even a virtual room with a lot of energy. And most importantly, ask questions. If you are a silent person that just keeps yourself on mute in that group session, the manager's not going to notice you, unfortunately. And so asking questions, especially those kind of thought-provoking questions, are going to be important. In a group setting, it can be difficult, but also see if you can get that person's contact information and send an email either right away or right after, saying thank you so much for your time. I thought XYZ that you were talking about was extremely interested. I've attached my resume and would love to set up a supplemental conversation with you to learn more about the company and your initiatives. And that way, even if you can't get a one-on-one FaceTime with the person or kind of get more information out of them, you're still setting that follow-up and hopefully getting that one-on-one with them. Does that answer that?
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Yeah. What else?
I had another couple of questions. The first one being, so this is something that I've heard from different professionals have different opinions. In your opinion, is it professional or acceptable to send out a LinkedIn invitation to someone that we've interviewed with? Or do you need to have worked with a person in order to send out a LinkedIn invitation?
On that LinkedIn. At the end of the day, you're trying to build out your network. So even if it was someone that you interviewed with and you did not get that opportunity, still follow up with them or still send that invite and just say it was great meeting you. Thank you so much for your time. I always say it does not hurt to build out your network, because even if you connected with them and things didn't work out for the opportunity, maybe a year down the road, they post on their LinkedIn saying, hey, we're hiring for a junior level candidate. Anyone interested? And you can reach out right away. So they'll probably post articles too, and maintaining that connection, that might even be someone that maybe they won't be your manager one day, but they could be a mentor. And so I would say definitely connect with them. And I know it can be awkward where it's like, hey, I don't know you, you don't know me. And it can be a little weird, but we're so used to it. Being in the industry, the goal is to network with as many people, because you're expanding your knowledge base.
Awesome, thank you. And
Yeah.
I have one other thing, which is you said that if we end up encountering someone in a group setting, or through other, maybe it's even like in person, but you don't have your resume with you. When you're sending a follow-up to like, to hand out your resume to someone who might be able to take it somewhere or is a hiring manager, when you're sending someone that email, should you treat it like an in-person interaction at a career fair where you give them your one-pager, or should you give them your more comprehensive resume?
Yeah, so I typically say when it comes to a resume, mostly industry professionals have 2+ pages. So if you don't have work experience or you haven't been within the industry for some time, try to consolidate it to 1 page in general. But that being said, I would say send your comprehensive one that has your projects detailed on there, because at the end of the day, this might be the one time that you get that email communication. So you, rather than stating, I've attached my resume, just say, hey, I've stated, or I've attached my CV. And that way they know it's going to be a lengthy document. Once again, it's just how you word it. What else? You guys are ready to rock the career fair, get some interviews? You guys look ready to go. You guys are great fun. Just work through that prep sheet.
Yes, thank you so much, Shivani. That was a really great presentation. Thank you for coming so well prepared and with exercises for us to do. We as a chapter, or we as a section, we really appreciate it. So thank you for your help.
Of course. If you guys do have any questions, I threw my email on there. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. But if you guys have any questions as far as like prepping for interviews, what to do, or you just want to chat, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to set up a one-on-one with you guys. Awesome. Well, if any other questions do pop up, feel free to send me an email, but thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.